Good morning. We have the pleasure of starting once again the dialogue on the themes that impacted the sustainable development of the Amazon. The Amazon is huge, needs to be developed to be even bigger. 24 million people live in the Brazilian side of the Amazon alone. Traditional peoples, indigenous, Quilombo people or Maroon populations, different communities, and 85% of these people live in cities. To guarantee income and means of subsistence to the Amazon citizens and protecting the forest is to guarantee life. To take care of the peoples and to be able for them to sell their products and to fight for the autonomy and to protect uh, the local culture is a mission of us all. Recently, we talked about financial resources for projects and infrastructures that are fundamental for generation of well of income. And it's important to fight for the sustainable development of the region. Today, we're going to talk about the invisible Amazon and the real Amazon, about the diversity of peoples, communities, and about lives in Amazon, generation of sustainable businesses, and the challenges imposed by the region. We'll talk about the dreams, desires, and the future about work, cooperation, and happiness. Amazon+21 is brought to you by the local government of Porto Velho, the Federation of Industries of the state of Rondônia, and sponsored by the National Confederation of Industries and Evaluology Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsors, the government of the state of Rondônia, Energisa, Sebrae, Sustainable Energy of Brazil, Geral Plant, and ABDI, the Brazilian Agency for Industrial Development. We'd like to thank the countless institutions that support Amazon+21 that are they're dialoguing with us about possibilities, content, and partnerships. Today, we will have three panels. The first, talking about people, about our people, about businesses, both in the morning. In the afternoon, we will have a third panel dialoguing about the role of cities in the development of the Amazon region. It is necessary to get to know Amazon. Many people bring almost exclusively a simplistic and romantic view on the Amazon, aiming at environment alone, trees, rivers, fauna, and preservation. It is necessary to get to know Amazon, to know about people, about cultures, and ways that man can live with forest. It is important to understand that subsistence and generation of income occur with the forest standing, and the economy and economic development are the main mechanisms of protection to the biome and the best way to conserve life. For the panel, a bit on the history, or a short tale on the history history of Amazon, we'll have the participation of the chief Almir Suri, here in the studio with his wife Janet Sui, remotely the playwright Márcio Souza from the Amazon, and geographer Mr. Rangel, all with deep knowledge of the Amazon life. We'll start with the considerations of our panelists. We want to know a bit about the trajectory of each one of you, the relationship you have established with the Amazon. How do you see the Amazon region, the people, the traditional population, the forest, the history, and the learning experiences that Amazon may bring to the world? And I start this presentation on the national considerations, passing the floor to the Amazon playwright Márcio Souza. Please, your initial consideration, sir. Can you hear me? Yes, sir. Yes, we can hear you fine. Beforehand, I'd like to say and to talk about my joy of being here, first and foremost, participating in this panel. and especially to participate in the panel where we have present chief of the heroic Surui population, Surui community that live in Rondônia and Mato Grosso. From a long history of fights towards defending the territory, their cultural integrity, part of the general fight of the peoples of the Amazon, or the ethnicities that fight to survive at one of the most hostile moments that have ever taken place in the history of Brazil regarding the ethnicity. Not even the bandeirantes, the first conquistadors of the Brazilian conquistadors that have were so tough on the life, on the livelihood of these people. Today, the Brazilian government wants to create a Holocaust in the Amazon, but they may not forget the actual destination is to be expected in the future. The government must rethink that. I am from the Amazon. I'm from Amazonas. I was born in Manaus in 1946. I studied social sciences. I am a playwright, and I'm a book writer as well. I have books that were translated into 25 languages. Ave Maria, that talks about the tragic construction of the Madeira Mamoré Railroad in Rondônia. I have a four book series talking about the squashed Amazon population by the Brazilian Empire and other novels and theater plays. And with a lot of joy, I'm participating in this panel. Thank you, Márcio. I pass the floor now to geographer Gustavo Rangel. Good morning. I'm very satisfied, quite pleased to be participating in this panel that has the participation of my great friend who I worked before as advisor to him. One of the greatest leaderships, indigenous leaderships, and one of the largest environmental activists that we have in Brazil, one of the greatest activists that we have acting all around the world. And it is an honor to participate in this panel together with the historian Márcio Souza, whom I use in my classes in the University of Rondônia in the course of archaeology in history of Amazon. The brief tale on the history of Amazon is one of the books that I use in this discipline. So I took this invitation, and I come to say that, well, my relationship with the Amazon region is from birth. I was born in Porto Velho, in the riverside of by the river, and I had the opportunity of studying in the Federal University of Rondônia, where I graduated and post-graduated, and now I am a professor of that institution. I had the opportunity of, well, together with the university and in my academic life, I want to participate a bit more in the lives of the traditional peoples and to get to know closely the peoples of the forest with whom I have worked with the Maroon population, with the Quilombolas in the Mamoré Valley. And also my doctorate thesis that I created when we talk about the geography of resistance. This work was with the Uruari peoples in the Guaporé Valley. We have some experience both in the forest as well as in the urban populations. The diversity of the peoples that live in cities, not only traditional peoples, but all the migrants that came to the Amazon in different migration cycles, creating social, cultural, environmental changes. So we want to contribute towards the environmental conservation in such a way that you can value the standing forest and to look at people, for the people who live in the Amazon. So here I'd like to just to restate how satisfied I am in being, how happy I am in being in this event. Thank you, Gustavo. I pass the floor now to Chief Surui. Good morning to all of you. It is a great pleasure to have received this invitation of this Amazon+21 event. And it is a pleasure to be able to talk with the people that know the Amazon, as our people know, as we have Mr. Gustavo and the others who contribute not only with me, but with all indigenous people of the Rondônia estate, with the advisory that he has worked with me. So for me, a part of history is born here. Something that starts by fighting for hope for the future generations. I know there is a step that needs to be built, but this dialogue is something that I believe that takes us to the right path into this debate, because the environment, because the quality of life of people who live in the Amazon, and what Amazon represents for Brazil as a whole, not only for indigenous populations, but for Brazil and for the world, and what the Amazon has been, in the role it has had with the construction or the building of this history of Brazil. Because Brazil has a great privilege to have, well, Amazon inside of it. So if Brazil were aware on what the Amazon represents, it would be a great leadership in the sustainability and the building of a better future that the world believes, well, that we are responsible for building, that we are the leaders and we are trying to contribute within all the possibilities of our conscience. We are responsible for building a better future for the next generations. I'd like to thank my wife, who's here with me following this challenge, and she's part of the basis, which is what the family is. Our people is contributing in a very conscious fashion to show the world and the Brazilian people as a whole what the Amazon represents to us. It is alive, and we're alive, and we're contributing. And she'll introduce herself as well. Please. Good morning to all of you. I'm Jeanette Surui. I am the wife of Chief Surui. And I'd like to thank you for being here. I am here representing my people with my husband, and I'd like to thank the president to believe in us and for having invited us. And that's it. Thank you. That's what I wanted to bring. Thank you. We are all together in this, dear friends. We will talk about our fight, and let's dream together on what we want for Brazil and the Brazilian people. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Surui and Jeanette, for having accepted this invitation to talk to us towards the building of a model that is adequate and that listens to the traditional populations of the Amazon in its construction, in its modeling. The theme of our panel today is the invisible Amazon and the real Amazon. And it feels that the world knows very little about the Amazon. So I'd like the panelists, starting by Chief Surui, to comment what it is like to live in the Amazon, what are the challenges that are faced, and how they are, or how Brazil and the world may aid in the sustainable development of our region, in the generation of wealth, in protection to the biome. Chief Surui, you have the floor. Well, to live in the Amazon is a privilege, as I have said before. To be part of the Amazon is a privilege. And it is where the Paite people have learned a lot about what it means to fight for quality of life. We are part of the forest people, and our relationship with the forest is of utmost importance. The forest generates wealth and knowledge and drugs and food, and all different mechanisms and all the services that forests provide have great importance for their lives, for the livelihood of humans, and we believe that it is important for all. So to live in the Amazon, if it were protected and if there was a way to have its development, and if everybody were aware of what to do and why to do, it would be of ultimate importance, of utmost importance. And we human beings, we have this great challenge ahead of us as humans, as mankind. Well, first of all, we are quite immediatist, and second, I talk about people in general, human beings. They don't feel related with the forest indigenous population. So when the Amazon so as the Amazon is being deforested, this has been of great concern for us. In my history of fighting for my people, well, I have started when I were 17. Now I am 46. So in my life, I try to find strategies for the whole world to try and understand the importance of the forest and the role of forests for the world.
And due to this pandemics that we're going through, COVID-19 would have been threatened by the climate change, and the role of the forest is extremely important to bring this balance, not only the environmental balance, but also we understand that if we had the climate change happening, how would Earth be strong enough to produce and to fulfill and to provide food for millions of people around the world? Because this production that is it's happening, the oil, the soil and the land is producing also strengthens. So it's extremely important for us to know that we are now in the 21st century and we have to use all of this knowledge, the traditional knowledge, the technology, and the research, scientific research as well, to put this knowledge together and try to find a pathway that would value all segments. And they understand that all sectors are important for a society that would be more fair, an economy that would be more aware. And we have been fighting for things to happen, not because we believe that some are enemies from each other. No, I believe that this moment is a moment that we need, is an extremely important moment. I believe that this debate and these discussions can continue so we can then understand that we are together fighting for a better country, for Brazil, which we respect, the Brazil that we want, is dealing sustainability as one of the mechanisms that could be strengthening the autonomy of the Brazilian people, valuing the roots, valuing the cultures, valuing the knowledges and traditions that already exist. Brazil hasn't been stronger in these dialogues inserting the indigenous people in the Brazilian population. And issues, and some people believe that we are enemies of each other, but I don't believe so. I believe that we have to put this knowledge together so we can then use it for to reach a better Brazil. So living in the Amazon is a huge challenge for us because people think that when you live in the Amazon, you go against the development. People also think that you are destroying the Amazon. So we need to understand that there are criteria. There is planning. We are aware. We have the conscious, and there are instruments that could be guiding us to develop in the Amazon based on our responsibilities and thinking on what we really want for the future of our generations. Thank you so much, Chief Shalui. I pass now the word to Gustavo Angel. Well, talking about the Amazon and a bit of the story of the Amazon, or the most recent story, because the story of the Amazon had several cycles, economic cycles of occupation, exploration, development, and changes. But the most recent one, more specifically for the region of the Rondônia state, we had here a model which caused, besides demographic changes, political and economic and social changes, cultural changes, environmental changes as well. The replacement are the substitution of huge areas of forests for grazing fields or pasture fields or monoculture as soybean fields. It doesn't seem to me that it would be minimally intelligent and rational because we have a great loss of this organic matter or this living matter. And as it was very well said by me, the forest we extract all of those information, all of the knowledge, all of those medicine, the life, the experience, the livelihood, and the relation of the forest peoples with the vegetation, nature, environment. So it's very different from the model that was inserted in the southern Amazon during the 70s and 80s. And we did not have many changes from that time on. The last 40, 50 years, we're still using the same techniques of working with the land in the Amazon. And that does not seem to be very intelligent. That does not seem to be very efficient. That's what we've been observing with changes and droughts that are more severe and longer. The rivers are not being able to reach their regular levels of floods and flows. And with this most recent development with the construction of the hydroelectric power plants in Madeira River Basin, the calculation that we had to produce the electricity with the alterations of those rainfall and the Amazon rivers now are what they are filled by rainfall and the volume of energy or electricity that we expected to produce might not be reached. We have already thought about that recently. We've already experienced that in the recent period. And other problems might happen not only in the Amazon but also in other regions, like in the Brazilian southeast and in the Midwest, because the rains that are produced in the Amazon and they are caused by the atmospheric pressure and the activity of the winds and they are taken to other regions, they are also going to be affected due to these extensive practices of livestock and agriculture that was taking place in the Amazon region. So it is important. We don't have this discourse of being against development of agriculture or livestock in the Amazon, but we must think in ways of using these natural resources better in this region and using the forests and using the traditional knowledge and using the most modern and efficient techniques and science and the academia and the universities have the condition and they already have some solutions, let's say, for these new uses of human and natural resources in the Amazon. It is extremely important. Uh, we should have discussions not only in the academic world but also in the popular world. We have to remember that this development for the Amazon should reach mainly we, the people who live in the Amazon, the peoples of the forest, the traditional populations, the quilombolas, the riverside communities, the indigenous, the extractivists, rubber tappers, the wood producers, and the miners, and the populations that came to the region fighting for better days with the agricultural cycles that we experienced in the 70s and 80s. Not everyone reached the expectations. Lots of them are blowing up the poverty pockets in the urban perimeters of the cities of the Honduras. So these people must be absorbed by the new public policies that should be implemented in the Amazon region. We also need to reach those people that live here. We must look to those people that live in the Amazon, and we have to try to find somehow an intelligent, rational, and sustainable way to reach the demands of the people that live in the forests. I believe that these are kinds of debates with the interests of Fiel, of Comércio, and all the other entrepreneurs and business people to look towards the Amazon, to the people that live here, and to the diversity of the Amazon peoples. Not only those that live in the forest, but also those that live in the cities. We have a huge diversity in the Amazon cities, and we need to fulfill a huge demand from this population. We need to reach, well, as it was said by Almir, we have this thought that we do have conditions to do this in a more efficient way. Thank you very much, Gustavo. I pass the word now to Márcio Souza. It's okay? Can you hear me? All right, yes, we can hear you, Márcio. Yes, it is. The microphone is on. We can hear you just fine. I would like to start saying that, well, comment on some observations made by Otávio, and also some important words from Chief Suri. Well, as the main topic of our discussion would be the invisible Amazon, well, I would like to start talking about this terrible invisibility of this subcontinent. That would be the non-existence of culture, literature. There's no literature for the rest of Brazil. Recently, the dear friend, writer, Beto Arthur, from the Amazon, the city of Manaus, and he talked about the literature from the city of Manaus and the Amazon region was classified. Well, the Vision magazine insulted the Brazilian intelligence, calling him a regionalist. And initially, well, it seems that's nothing very serious to label a writer as a regionalist. But that's a kind of a seal or a stamp that was created or invented out of Brazil to defend the European literature from the Russian literature, as the Northeastern and Rio de Janeiro literature came in the first decades of the 20th century, and that came the area of second category writers of Rio de Janeiro origin. But as they were Northeastern, they needed to create this concept of regionalists. It's not from the first world, right? It's not the mainstream. It's not the major metropolis. It's from a different region, the Northeast. And that would be a label or a wrong misclassification that is very prejudiced, because Beto is a writer translating it to the whole world. He talks about Brazil, starting from the Amazon. So that's one of the first aspects that has the spirit of brasileirante, or I say this with artificial effect, and that was because the destroyed Amazon sending the army, the hero army, the Amazon, with more than 40% of deaths. So it did not become an independent country. So those issues are way back there from this religion view of this educational effect for the Brazilian public administration in relation to the Amazon. It's an area which is natural. It's underdeveloped. That's true. And I would like also to call attention to one other aspect that you should mentioned, which is the knowledge of the traditional cultures. I believe it's an economic stability to knock down forests to rear cattle and plant soybean without knowing what they have in the Amazon forests, really. Here we have been ruling since the 70s and since the 60s, let's say, we have created the Institute of Amazon Research, INPA, which is based in Manaus, a very nice headquarters with a very important group of researchers and scientists, and also an office in Berlin. That's an entity which comes from the old republic. Both of those entities have contributed deeply to change the knowledge over the Amazon nature. But more recently, these entities haven't been having resources or money. The BS or the director of IPA is a low salary, and not even the cleaning professionals of the National Congress would like to take the position. Besides that, they don't have budget. Last year, the IPA president had to close the science forest. It's a kind of a reproduction or a sample of the Amazon forest within the Manaus urban perimeter. There's a 3.5 million inhabitants. And that happened during the dictatorship with the program of the industries of Manaus. Well, the mayor of Manaus, Arthur is from the city. He's a native. He offered people from the city hall that was trained to keep this structure, Bosque da Ciência, open. Not only for the knowledge of the future generations, the federal government would be interested. They want to have that underdeveloped so they could have problems with fires and illegal logging and criminals, illegal miners. That's the main view of this dear gentleman that is in front of the Ministry of Environment, or this criminal man, I would say. So the invisibility starts there from the cultural production of the region. Because it is labeled as regionalist, so they don't need to have a wider repercussion or they and they can label one of the main writers in Brazil as a regionalist, as it would be a problem. And another aspect of the invisible Amazon, I believe the main urban centers as well, not as much with Belém problem, but more the Amazônia state. I was impressed photographing the last time I was in the state of Amazônia 2 years ago, when the plane was landing in the airport in Porto Velho City. I saw my River in front of Porto Velho in very low level, very dry, with pockets of sand, banks of sand, and that was one of the most beautiful rivers in the region. It was a tiny river, but it's impacted by these heavy power plants that can't even give the energy that we need. The Korea just destroyed a great portion of the forest, let's say, because ignorance in relation to the Amazon is not with the Amazon people. It would be from the technocrats in Brasilia or the elite and the financial elite in São Paulo. So it would be the main situation that we have is that the national policy is created is that to keep the Amazon delayed, under development, without resources, because and that's something pretty stupid. We would have conditions to have insertions in the higher tier of the industry. For example, taking advantage of a deeper knowledge of the cultures and of the tribal societies of the Amazon and the indigenous people, the knowledge that they have over the fauna and the flora. It's a complete stupidity to burn without knowing what medicines, what panacea you could kill or destroy in the forest. I could mention here a few examples. One is curare, which is used for hunting in most of the ethnicities of indigenous people. Curare does not kill the animal. They knock out the animal, they stun the animal, and then the hunter can take the animal and kill the animal when they are going to prepare the food. Curare was discovered by American scientists in the beginning of the 20th century. And until that point, we didn't have anesthesia. If somebody had to have an amputation, a leg amputation, or a limb amputation, they would have to knock them out, right? And they can cut the leg off for that patient. So curare allowed the development of the pharmaceutical industries to create the anesthesias that we have today in the contemporary medicine. If it wasn't this contribution from the chiefs in the pajes and the warriors and the hunters, we would still be being knocked out or being dragged out. Even for some friends, they would love that, or maybe we could be just knocked out with a hit on our head. Another example that pays business for the pharmaceutical interest that was, well, I'm not going to mention this, he went to research in the Amazon forest in Ecuador, and there he was working with Pages, and this chief was showing us some plants that they used to produce some medicine, and I was already looked at this plant, and I already experimented it, and I had a young guy that had a heart attack, right? The heart was beating too fast, and
I applied treatment with that plant, and everything was normalized. So he always says like, don't forget to take the ants with you. So he gave $60 to this healer, to this page, for him to get the plants and to post him using these $60. So the pharmaceutical industry created the beta blockers that saves a lot of heart patients. I myself, when I had emotional arrhythmia for a year, I took this drug. I took these beta blockers. This chief or this healer went. He spent a bit more than the $60 because he needed to go to the city. And today, the pharmaceutical industry, they earn billions by using that. So, in fact, for you to burn a kilometer or 10-kilometer portion, you're burning gold, which is something quite stupid if you allow me. It's something. So there's ignorance that without consulting the scientists of the Amazon and the ones that actually know the livelihoods, what comes from that. So it is a tragic moment, first and foremost. This is a tragic moment that I have never thought that I would witness something of that sort. I must say that as an Amazonian and as someone from Manaus, I had to make a lot of effort to know the Amazon, because if you're born in Manaus, you're born in a Portuguese fort. You don't know anything about the river, about the forest, about the jungle, you know a little, but not, you do not know the Amazon. You may live and die in Manaus, that came to be as a Portuguese fort that protected the inhabitants of the forest and the indigenous. But one day it was dissolved. It was not necessary anymore. If you're born in Manaus, basically you live inside the fort. It is something revolutionary, the one that destroys the walls. You know, it was so ill or poorly made forts that even though the walls were not good. So the best thing you can do is go up river, because there the walls were made of brick and mortar. But it was an important fort to alienate the Manaus population. On Manaus, I'm talking about the invisibility of the Amazon. I'll talk about that in my next participation. Thank you, Marcio. I'd like to send a question to Chief Surui. Chief, if you could please talk about the situation of the ethnicities there. What are the needs, dreams, and how the Brazilian society and the government may aid in the protection and development of the indigenous populations? Well, to defend the territory and to recognize the rights of indigenous people, it is already in the Brazilian constitution. So the government just needs to implement and respect that. Because everybody knows that public policies that are written as developing and respecting, it is an important instrument that guides to do what must be respected. So the government must do so in order to protect the land and to protect physically the indigenous populations. The biggest challenge at this moment for indigenous populations is to try and find the self-management of the territory. A type of management that respects the peoples. It's not a top-down development. It must start from there, because the indigenous, their population, they know what is necessary. I can give you an example of that. In fact, within the territory of the Surui people, we created a strategic 50-year plan on how we want our land to be developed in partnership with the environment and to strengthen the economy, how we want our health to be taken care of, what situation we want, and what tools, or technological tools rather, what scientific tools or traditional tools that we need to put together in order for us to develop the territory of the Paita Surui people, respecting the lives of the Paita people. I know that in the Amazon, there are public policies for the management of the land. They are much more generic, so each people must decide how they want to manage their own territory. Unfortunately, we are indigenous people. The policy is only one for us, but we have our different cultures, we have different languages, and the thought of each human being, it fortunately is different, and it must be respected. So I'm very careful when I speak in behalf of the indigenous people, because I defend what I think and what I would like to do for my people. So this 50-year strategic plan of the Paita Surui people has guided that, well, we need to train the youth for them to take ownership of their future. Therefore, within the Paitesuri people, we are creating the Indigenous University. Well, for us to value our knowledge, value our culture, and for the future to share responsibly that with society. I have traveled a lot and I have visited 49 countries, 49 different countries where we have worked in such a way that the sustainable policies are important for the world for us to, well, for us to consume products in a conscious fashion. In the Amazon, when we talk about development, I believe we must use more different types of knowledge. We have enough space to produce. We don't need to deforest. Well, in some state governments, they have the economic zoning, ecological zoning, and we must have that implemented in each state. In that way, we may use the tools that have been built because there was a huge financial expenditure or in order to have that created. And for indigenous people, I believe the largest challenge is, well, because now we're living in two different cultures, or a traditional one and the non-indigenous culture. And the non-indigenous part, well, we need to find answers on how we can keep this culture that is not ours, and to maintain such culture, the basis is economy. But in order to do that, well, we know it is necessary to have this planning and to study the feasibility, the economic feasibility, the environmental feasibility, cultural one as well, management of such policies in order for us to advance more and more, generating this opportunity of dialogue with other segments within this awareness of indigenous peoples. In a sense, well, to develop the Amazon in a more responsible fashion, well, you can't run away from that. Way back in the past, I was more radical in the ways to defend Amazon. I'm not saying I'm not radical. I'm saying that today I have a different way of thinking that, well, it's necessary for us to think and discuss proposals around the table. I can't say the other segments are my enemies because we're Brazilian people. We defend Brazil. We want Brazil to advance. Respecting its people. In that way, we believe that Brazil has made some mistakes along the way. So, first thing is to respect what has been already established in the Brazilian law. So we may only use this knowledge and respect these criteria and discuss in dialogue. In the past years, well, Brazil has talked a lot about the conflict with the indigenous peoples. But I believe that no war that take place, no, well, we need to find the responsible for that. And how the land reform that has taken in Brazil is actually the responsible one. So we must find, with this dialogue, how we can sort that out, and the government must sort that out. It's not to be the government of one party. It needs to be the government of all Brazilians, and that way we may advance. And we as indigenous peoples, we have worked and we have prepared the future through the youth. Today, the Paitasuri people has more, well, we have part of our youth that are masters and has the possibility of discussing with the sectors in an equal way. We do not want to be victims, but we want to be heard and the dialogue to be respected. And that way, we want to contribute for the good of the Amazon and Brazil in order for Brazil to be respected by other countries. Because the way we have dealt with this environmental issue here, we must see that the environmental issue, in fact, has huge responsibilities of bringing this balance in, this economic balance as well. Because as I have said, I have walked around and I have seen the world. I see people are creating this conscience of building of this awareness. If you have social responsibility, environmental responsibility, and economic responsibility as well. Those three pillars are of utmost importance for us to advance strongly economically with Brazil. Thank you, Chief Suri. Now a question to Mr. Gurgel. One of your studies deal with geography of emotions and feelings, the knowledge and flavors of the Amazon. Please do tell us a bit about this research and how the cultural geography of Amazon stand out and with the traditional populations and the rest of the world, how they can relate. Well, it is an amazing opportunity to talk about this new and recent research is geography of knowledge, of emotions and feelings. Culinary art and the foods of the Amazon and how the traditional populations, the peoples of the forest, have revealed that to us, as well as its importance and knowledge, helping us to survive in the Amazon. The Amazon today, not only today, but ever since they invented the Amazon, we always had the interest to know the flavors of this region. And through this research on geography of feelings, we understand that the relationships of affection around a plate of food and the ownership of Amazon flavors, they are being discovered more and more, and they are being sought of. And one of the superfoods in the Amazon that we have been spreading the word about in revealing, or not only revealing, but strengthening this idea is manioc, is the cassava or yuca. The indigenous populations, they saw that it survived that in the Amazon, basically using the yuca and as well as game, as hunting and fishing. And those are the flavors that the whole world now are being impressed with. Tucupi, the flowers, and everything. They are all byproducts of the yuca and the flavors of the Amazon. And today we have here a consolidated culinary, a regional one, an Amazon-based one, and a Brazilian-based one that the whole world is interested in. But many, for a long time, we have denied its existence and, even avoided it. Some time ago, tucupi, açaí, tapioca were indigenous food, were Indian food, if I may, in a derogatory sense, and there was no acceptance in the market. Today, everywhere in the country, you see açaí being sold with its adaptations and all differences that you have in the region. Quite different from the way it is eaten in Amazon, but it's an Amazon product. Uh, Açaí was one of the most sought of things from the Amazon. Tucupi as well, using broth, in tacacá, as well as tambaqui, the fish from the Amazon. We must think that this not only has a great cultural appeal or of ownership, of cultural identity, it has a strong economic appeal. The state of Rondônia is one of the largest producers of tambaqui in the world, and the largest producers of pirarucu fish or pirarucu farms in the world. And those are things that are advancing, and more we're selling this tambaqui, this fish, or these types of fish to other regions in the country. Even within indigenous lands, you have fish farms. So it is possible to develop economically in the Amazon without the need of deforesting huge areas, without the need of handling the soil with forest fires. Those are two of the examples that we see in the Amazon. There are different ones in the Amazon. It is possible indeed to work with the development of Amazon through policies that are more sustainable, more rational, and more efficient. The geography of Amazon allows today, well, through geography, the occupation of Amazon and the use of Amazonian resources in a more efficient fashion. So this dialogue between geography, environment, culture, and value, and identity, and ownership is a dialogue that is stronger and stronger in its consolidation. The economy in the Amazon may and must be better explored through consortium crops, livestock, and differently from the livestock that we have, the extensive model in Amazon, in other regions of the Amazon. It uh, may be within the feedlots, or in a consortium, the consortium livestock, or together, actually livestock and crops together and plantations together, the extraction of, well, wood, and as well as nut picking and oils and essences, and the rubber trees and other resources from the forest that are as important for the economy, the local economy, national and international economies.
We need to have that will and awareness and be conscious that not only the most traditional ways of agribusiness production should be implemented in the Amazon. And different from that, we don't need to deforest anything else in the Amazon. We just need to have a better use and in a more balanced and sustainable way. And that is possible. That is feasible. We do have technology for that, and we can develop even more. Starting from this development and with investments in the techniques. We have the public universities, we have the institutes of research, we have the foundations, we have the NGOs that are working with little resource. And even though they can give a return and outcomes and results that are efficient to us, what we need is a better communication, or invest more and implement this in an effective way, spreading this around the Amazon, really including the people and we that live in the Amazon in this project, and not only bringing the investors from other places and countries, or immigrants, or speculators of land. We already have a lot of that in the Amazon. Now we need to use this Amazon space with the human and natural resources of the Amazon in a more rational way, in a more intelligent way. As I already said, and I repeat once again, I strengthen this point. We do have technology for such, and we have knowledge for that. We just need the opportunity. The academia needs to be heard. We need more investments. It's important for the entrepreneurs and the agro industry to understand that science is not going against the agribusiness development, but we are going against how it's still being done. We have primitive ways of land or soil use in the Amazon. The fires and replacement of the Amazon forests for the grazing fields and the monocrops are already old, outdated, obsolete. They would not be enough for the needs and demands that we have in the Amazon and out of the Amazon. Because we have to remember that the Amazon is responsible for the maintenance of the climate, of the rainfall, of the atmospheric pressure in South America, the continent, American continent. I mean, so those influences that are being generated with all the interferences that are generated in Amazon influence in several of the regions of Brazil and also in other countries, let's say, in our continent. So we must be aware of that. If we do not advance together, development, progress, sustainability, environment, valuing and the cultural belonging, the valuing of the people of the forest, and all those Amazon residents, or those also that live in the Amazon cities. If we don't think in all of those, certainly the losses are going to be even greater, maybe irreversible. We already have negative results in impacts that give us an example of that. We cannot just believe that nothing is happening. We cannot just close our eyes and not see that. So it is important for academic and scientific work and those that are not so pretentious as this one that we're trying to develop now through the astronomy, through the flavors and the geography and the culture. We must understand that these kind of work and projects give voice to the people of the forest, to the Amazon people, and that show the local culture and the local knowledge of the Amazon populations. These knowledges are so important and they are so relevant that we now have the international interest over them. And it's much more interesting and it's much more efficient if this interest would be a national interest from the Brazilian people. Generally speaking, of course, that the companies and the industries and the investors, the economy, do have a speech or an appeal that is really important, and we cannot forget that. But the traditional populations have a lot to tell us and they have a lot to contribute for the development of the Amazon. And the more we know, and the more we have knowledge over the Amazon, the more we have this will, and we feel the need to keep and to preserve and to use it with intelligence. And we know it's possible to use the human and natural resources of the Amazon in a more efficient way. Thank you so much, Gustavo. And now pass a question to the historian, Masu. You are a great writer and a dramaturgist in the Amazon region, and you debate the Amazon region as few. Tell us a little bit about this passion that is to live in the Amazon and how to converge the romantism of stories and images to the region, to the local reality. What would it be like to live in the Amazon and why the Amazon region experience is unforgettable? Well, I don't know if living in the Amazon is something very interesting and amazing. But before going to this question, I would like to congratulate Otavio. I'm sorry, Gustavo, for this wonderful work that I learned about recently, and the concern they have over the flavors and the culinary or the gastronomy of the Amazon. Brazil said that we have three culinary gastronomy: the South, Northeast, and the Amazon culinary, our cuisine. And now, our cuisine of all of those, we have the northeastern cuisine that is imported from the Amazon, but the Amazon cuisine is native, it's created here, and I believe it has at least 40,000 years of existence. And these values that you just raised, or these food values, they have been worked in the past by Oswaldo Rico, Luis Pereira, and you are a current follower of this concern. You remember that currently acai is a very popular drinking in the south of Brazil and in São Paulo. I am shocked because they use granola in açaí. Well, usually we use tapioca flour on it, but granola, no way. But they insist on granola. And something else that I heard is that the greatest açaí supplier, the açaí pulp in southern region is São Paulo. And they imported the cajuzara and the palm trees from this region. And after some years, they already produce açaí. It's a highly productive palm tree, as we know, açaí tree, as we know. So if we continue with this high production of açaí in Pará, we can, well, that's a drink in the Pará. Locals have to take, they like the tacacá. That would be Amazon soup or a historical soup of the Amazon region, tacacá. And Socrates tasted it in an exhibition in Manaus, and he said that would be a fashion or a trend in France when the land would be more tropical. So Manaus would have the climate weather, and that would be the cultural center of the world. I don't believe that this ice age would happen, and considering the policies of the city of Manaus as well, but I would like, well, having said all of that, I would like to encourage you all to go deeper, and I would like to encourage you to go deeper in this special work, and I hope that you can enjoy this food, and then you can share these gastric experiences of the flavors, the smell, the creation, the techniques, and the backstage of that kind of cuisine that is being offered by the Amazon people, or the riparian, or the rivers, and not in the forest people, but Amazon is not all living in the forest. Few entities live in the forest. They live on the riverside, so it's a riparian population, a riparian people that we have to say. But I would like to call attention to something that is very severe. Another crime against the Amazon ethnicities in Brazil. We are now processing and it will be decided in the Supreme Court before the end of the month. Well, that says those indigenous lands that were demarked until the approval of the Constitution, the Citizen Constitution of 98, will stay with those lands. Those that were demarked after the Constitution, or that most of the indigenous lands, would lose their rights to have their demarcation. So it's another movement of the enemies of the ethnicities. As Suri, the Chief Suri said, we need to have land and economy. As he very wisely knows, as all of the chiefs of the Amazon region know. Therefore, we are of the Amazon, and we defend the Amazon, and we are allied to the ethnicities of the Amazon region in Brazil. We must be on standby properly to avoid this crime that is going to be practiced by the legislation or the law against the indigenous territories. And that is part of the promise of Victoria's candidate that has said not one more centimeter of land to the indigenous. And he is threatening to deliver the ethnicities to the Pentecostals. So at this moment, our look, our concerns, our worries, our strengths should be directed to the Federal Supreme Court, where we have judges that know the Brazilian story, Brazilian history, but we have to be aware for any kind of movements and maneuvers of the most conservatives or that are hidden there. This is a very serious moment because when the Supreme Court decides, it becomes a policy, a legislation that can be properly applied over those struggles and fights of the indigenous peoples and to keep their territories and to have the rights to maintain their territories. I would like to remember that here in Brazil we have two areas, two indigenous provinces, let's say. One is artificial, which is Xingu, and the Xingu reserves were created by a democratic government, by a great military, by Shao Rondon Marshall that said it's better to die than to kill. And this coming from a military marshal and a great thinker. Well, he created this perspective of survival for the indigenous people and he took it to practice. And he himself was descended by a very important. So besides besides the Mato Grosso state area, there is the municipality of São Gabriel da Cachoeira, of Upper Negro River, border with Colombia and Venezuela. There would be another absolutely indigenous area where officially it is spoken Portuguese, and Lingatu, the general. The mayor is of an ethnicity, I don't know the moment, I believe is a Tucano, the Tucan ethnicity. The schools of the city halls, elementary schools up to 8th grade, they teach in their mother tongue, their mother language. Afterwards, they start being educated in Portuguese for the rest of their school years. Their school books are produced by the State Secretary of Education of the state of Amazonas in their mother language, their mother tongue. They go to school. Here in the proximity between Manaus and Rondônia State, we have the Valmiriam Alcala Reserve. That won the war creating this reserve during the construction of the road from Manaus to Roraima, to Boa Vista, Roraima. Education has the same structure as the school structure of the Amazonas state. This generated a revolution in Upper Negro River. We have the Confederation of the Indigenous Nations, and in Negro River there is an editor. They have a virtual library, and there they started editing, and the youth that were literate in Ingatu and Portuguese started to write about their origins. And the pioneer of that was Luis Lama, an indigenous that became a chief of Chiquia River. And Luis, in Persona, his name is Paulo, wrote the book Before the World Did Not Exist, according to the Persona culture. After the publication of the book, well, he talked about several anthropologists, doctors, because they did not have access to the true stories that they did there. They had children that were informants that had been or experienced initiation. So they were disturbed by this book of Ruslana. He publishes a new edition. This year it's the 40th anniversary of Ruslana's edition. But besides Luis, we have several other groups. Some of that read it, everything is wrong. Our group believes that it should be like this and be published, and also other entities that were getting ready to prepare their own version. Dazo book also is in Persona on one page in the manuscript, and Portuguese on the next page. The original manuscript could be accessed in Brasileiros Memorial at the University of Brasilia. I've been there recently visiting, and in my homage they got this manuscript and they put it on a table so I could see it. After 40 years, I could see Luis's manuscript. Madalena, Luis's wife, has already died. She was contaminated by mercury she died. And he already open hand or give away the status of chief, the setup. He's an author, an editions author, and he generated a huge generation of writers, youth writers, indigenous writers from Upper Negro River. I have to say that I am not even myself can get those books. I ask them to send me, they tell me, no, you have to come here to get them. We don't have postal delivery services. So I did not have the chance to go there. I have already been there several times when I was earlier, now only by plane, and we don't have regular flights from Manaus to Santander. We have to ask for the Air Force to get a ride to take us there, or we have to rent a plane. And that is something very surprising for us. Suruichi probably knows about this importance, I'm sure, but in his tribe they have youth which is writing about the Sudbury memories. And each of those memories would be an interpretation that maybe was coming closer to the view that science has over the creation of the, well, another version, in the descendant version, let's say, the Big Bang happens, well, there's an explosion that generates a youth girl, that is Babylon, the grandmother of the world. And she creates the explain the creation of the white man until that in what we went from there is a whole, and that's where the whole humanity came from. All ethnicities, not only the indigenous, but all the people. The only, well, the humanity came with an adult body without anything in their mind, no learning, no experience. So they had to navigate through a lake before the creation of Earth, and there were 30 stops, 30 houses of initiation where the human beings were learning to be humans. And one of them denied it. It was the white man that was in the margin to it, and the stories, they were in the margin drinking from illusion. So nowadays the indigenous don't need anything. They have everything. The knowledge, the wealth is in their future. If they need something, they will get it from the forest. They will ask for permission to hunt an animal. They might have the authorization to hunt those animals, and can take it to eat, and they will share it with everyone.
In the meanwhile, the white man needs to leave everything outside, the mobile, the clothes, the cars, the washing machine. They must accumulate everything because there was no knowledge that was taken by the lake of milk. Well, it is a beautiful story of great humanism with all the vices of human beings, the envy, the competition, the evil, but with all the values that enrich mankind. Once again, I'd like to exhort the ones that are listening to us, please listen to what is happening at the Supreme Court. We can't watch passively that the rights that were achieved, sometimes with the extinction of whole populations, go back to the conquistador times. Thank you, Marcio. Our time is over. This is an amazing, delicious talk, and I wish I could spend the whole day learning about the Amazon with you. And out of everything that has been said so far, I'd say that our initiatives that we called Amazon+21 is based on dialogue. That's why it's a forum of dialogue. We want to hear everybody who lives in the Amazon to build together a model that would be adequate and would respond to the demands of the populations of cities, of forests, and the almost 25 million Brazilians who live in the Amazon. There are over 34 million that live in the Amazon region as a whole. This is our effort to join together government, academia, and we have a great look to find the possibility of environmental agenda, not only a mandatory agenda, to follow the legislation. I see here the great opportunity when we strengthen the dialogue and partnerships towards the construction of the sustainable model that will be pursued by all of us and built by all of us. I would like with to show my gratitude, well, to Chief Surui. I'd like to thank you, your presence in you and your wife to having accepted the invitation of coming and talking to us and talking about the experience of you and your people in the way you have sought to
I would like to thank for we have been trying to develop a model.
we have a business plan, a tourism extractivist in nuts and coffee. Uh, in why tourism? Because within tourism, you may work with education, environmental education, economic growth, valuing, and for you to have the awareness of doing things that happen quite well. Well, we are always open to have this dialogue of construction that we believe that uh, the responsibility of building a better future for all. So it is quite concerning, Marcio, when you talk about this process that we see in the Supreme Court lawsuit, because we can never go back with acquired rights. We need to advance for a better one, not to take a step back. So it is quite concerning. From now on, we believe things must advance through the dialogue and to respect the acquired rights that have reached us so far. Those rights will be put together for us to have a Brazil that is more fair to all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Surui. The link may drop at any time as well. Another, well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm honored to participate in this forum together with Marcio Souza in the indigenous leaderships, the Chief Surui, my great personal friend. I am happy to be able to talk about the Amazon and to talk about this place that we geography that we called the topophilia is a love to the place, a love for the place that we feel we belong to. So this love for this place that is Amazon is what makes us to think makes us think in a better way. And I say live better as a whole population of the Amazon. So to bring to this region quality of life and in the sense that who live here, the people who live here, they live in a harmonious and sustainable fashion, and we live here for a long time with quality, with a more efficient and more intelligent way. So to have this opportunity and to be able to give a contribution to that makes me quite happy, and I leave myself in a more well, I'm always available to participate and to contribute in this discussion for us to think about tomorrow, the tomorrow of this place. Marcio, your final contribution. I just want to tell Chief Sri that the whole land in Brazil belong to the ethnicities. We're all invaders here. We needed to ask permission and to follow the policies proposed by the chiefs of ethnicities. Brazil is indigenous, has always been, and will always be. Thank you all for the participation. I'd like to thank our guests, our public, our audience that are following the Amazon+21.org or Amazon21.org rather. In 5 minutes, we'll start the next dialogue. Thank you.